The house on Oakshade Lane always felt like a stage. Every polished plate, every symmetrical picture frame, every dinner perfectly timed to 6:30, a performance. But I played my role. For years, I told myself that if I gave enough, did enough, stayed quiet enough, I'd earn something like love. Or at least gratitude. Kevin never hid how he felt. He was 15 when I married Linda, already old enough to harden. A sharp boy. Too sharp. He'd correct me at the table. Call me Mike. Never Dad. I let it slide. Boys test boundaries, I told myself. He'll come around. He didn't. Kevin had his father's eyes. Dark, flat, cold. They held no wonder in them, no room for someone new. His father, Richard, a name spoken only when convenient. He'd show up once or twice a year, unannounced, bearing oversized gifts and undersized effort. A weekend here, a trip there. Just enough to keep his fingerprints on Kevin's memory. But never enough to shoulder anything real. I was the one who stayed. The one who kept the lights on. Who repaired the pipes in the dead of winter. Who covered Kevin's dental surgery when Richard's insurance mysteriously lapsed. I was the one who bought Kevin his laptop for school. Paid the private tutor when he failed algebra. Sat through every mind-numbing parent-teacher conference while he slouched in the corner and pretended I wasn't in the room. And Linda, well, she thanked me. At least at first. With soft words, with tired eyes, with brief touches on my shoulder as she passed. "You're doing more than his own father ever did," she once whispered. That was 5 years ago. Back when she still looked at me like I was saving something. But time wears down everything, especially gratitude. Especially love. By year 6, Kevin had made it clear. I was the man who paid for everything and nothing else. He didn't yell. He didn't rebel in some movie script kind of way. No, his contempt was quiet, measured, surgical. He'd speak to me only when he needed something. A ride, a signature, a few $100s for books. Otherwise, I didn't exist. And Linda stopped noticing. She stopped asking me how work was. She stopped waiting up when I got home late. She stopped correcting Kevin when he called me the bank behind my back. And sometimes to my face. I heard it once through the vent while he was on the phone with his friend. "The bank's home. Gotta go." Laughter followed. Then silence. I stared at the wall that night, alone in the bedroom. I counted every plaster patch, every inch of insulation I'd put in with my own hands. That house was my monument, and somehow I'd been written out of it. Still, I endured, because that's what men like me are taught to do. Provide. Protect. Persevere. Even when no one sees you. Especially then. When Kevin turned 18, Linda planned a party. Backyard lanterns, catered food, a rented speaker system. She invited 30 people. I paid for 50. I grilled for hours, smiled through my sweat, shook hands with uncles who couldn't remember my name. Kevin opened his gifts under the lights, and when it came time to thank people, he hugged his mother, waved to his friends, and said, "My dad couldn't be here, but he sent me this watch." The applause was soft, the silence after louder. I was holding the trash bag when he said it, standing 5 feet away, holding 3 hours of wrapping paper and paper plates, a cramp in my back and grease on my arms. I didn't say a word. I turned, walked to the side of the house, and kept going until I reached the tree line. There, in the dark, I exhaled. That should have been the end. It wasn't. Kevin kept taking. That fall, he got into a state university barely. His grades were average, but Linda celebrated like it was Harvard. She posted on Facebook, made custom shirts, printed a banner that read, "Kevin's future starts now." I stood next to him for the pictures. He didn't look at me once. I paid for his enrollment deposit, then the tuition, then the dorm fees, then the security deposit on the off-campus apartment he just had to have. Linda asked me once if we could afford it. I lied. I said yes. Truth was, I cashed out my vacation fund. The one I'd been saving for 5 years. The one for the cabin in Michigan. I never mentioned it. I started driving Uber at night. Did freelance electrical work on weekends. Linda asked why I was so tired. I said it was just the season. Kevin came home once a month. Never stayed long. left dishes in the sink, laundry on the floor, and took whatever cash was lying around. One time I left a 20 on the table. He took it without a word. When I mentioned it later, Linda laughed. He's a college kid. He's broke. So was I. But no one noticed. The distance between us wasn't measured in miles. It was measured in absences, in the things left unsaid. The birthdays where he called his real dad first. The nights Linda whispered, "He's still figuring himself out." The mornings I made breakfast for 3 and ate alone anyway. Then came the dinner. April 12th, a Friday. Linda had invited her friends from the office. Kevin brought 2 of his own. Boys with practiced grins and that same flippant tone he'd perfected. We set the table. Chicken piccata, steamed asparagus, white wine, not the cheap kind. The house looked like a showroom. Kevin wore a blazer. His friends wore smirks. It was meant to be a celebration. Kevin had just locked in his internship, one of those unpaid gigs that somehow costs more than it gives. I pulled strings to get it. Called in a favor from an old contractor I used to work with. Kevin never asked how he got it. He assumed it had always been his. We toasted. Small talk filled the room like smoke. Thin, pointless. I laughed when I needed to, nodded when appropriate. I was invisible, until Kevin made me visible. He tapped his glass with his fork. The room quieted. He stood, and he said with perfect composure, "You're nobody, just a walking wallet. Get out." Silence. No gasp. No protest. Just silence. His friends laughed. One actually clapped. Linda smiled. A brief one. Tight-lipped. Like it was a joke. Like it was fine. I looked at her. She didn't look back. I looked at Kevin. He held my gaze. There was no fear in his eyes. No regret. Just certainty. That was the moment. The shift. The crack turned canyon. The rope snapped. But I didn't explode. I chewed, swallowed, took a sip of wine, and said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. The man I had been, the provider, the fixer, the filler of other men's failures, had died in that moment. Quietly, without fanfare, killed not by hatred, but by indifference. When the dishes were cleared, I offered to do them. I stood at the sink for 20 minutes, hands under water gone cold, scrubbing plates no one would thank me for. Then I went to the study, opened the drawer, took out the folder marked house title. My name, not Linda's, not Kevin's, mine. The house we were eating in, the walls that held that dinner were mine. Paid in full. Years ago. Saved from foreclosure after Linda defaulted. Her credit wrecked, her nerves shattered. I fixed it. Quietly, without ever asking for thanks. She never knew. Kevin certainly didn't. They had dined in my home, mocked me at my table, laughed over food I had paid for. And all the while they thought I was just a fixture. That night I slept soundly, for the first time in years, because I wasn't angry. I was free. I didn't speak of it the next morning. I poured my coffee, kissed Linda's temple, nodded to Kevin when he slouched into the kitchen, shirtless, scratching his ribs like an animal that had never been taught manners. No apology, not even a hint of shame, just hunger and the expectation of comfort. He made eggs, used the last of the milk, left the pan in the sink. By noon he was gone, out with the same friends who had laughed at me over the asparagus. Linda said nothing about the night before. She had watched it happen. Watched her son stand, humiliate me in my own house, reduce me to a bank statement, and now she folded laundry like none of it mattered. That silence told me everything. There was no shock, no guilt, no correction, just indifference. I waited until they both left the house, Kevin to study, Linda to run errands, and then I sat down at the kitchen table. Same chair, same table, the same place I had been erased. I opened my laptop, logged into the wedding planner account. The number was obscene. Venue deposit, $8,000. Catering estimate, $5,200. Photographer, $2,700. DJ, florals, transportation, it added up quickly. I had paid each deposit without discussion. like a man buying silence one transaction at a time. I had signed every contract, used my accounts. Kevin and his fiancée had picked everything. Linda had nodded along. I had paid. Click. Cancel venue. Click. Notify caterer. Refund forfeited. Click. Email the planner. Client withdrawing financial support. Do not rebook. I moved slowly, carefully, like dismantling a bomb. Next, the joint account Linda never checked. The one I used for Kevin's tuition, car insurance, groceries. I opened a second browser window and logged into the autopay portal. University. Cancelled. Rent for Kevin's apartment near campus. Cancelled. The wedding savings line item. Zeroed out. One by one, I severed the arteries. Quietly. Surgically. The final task was a phone call. Not to Linda. Not to Kevin. But to the realtor I knew 2 cities away. A woman named Marcia I'd met while renovating a flip property 5 years ago. Discreet. Efficient, no questions. Still have that contact for private listings? I asked. She paused. You looking to buy? No. Sell. Quietly. Off-market. Address. I gave it. Our home. The place Linda believed was hers. The place Kevin had called just the house when arguing about curfews. The place I had poured a decade of income into. Nights on roofs, Saturdays in crawl spaces, Sundays installing crown molding, while Linda scrolled through Instagram posts of homes she liked better. Marcia was silent for a moment. I can get it listed by end of week, she said. You want to vet buyers or just cash? Cash. Fast. No signs on the lawn. No contact with my wife. You sure? I looked out the window. The yard I had fertilized last fall was green again. Kevin's muddy shoes had stained the porch. I remembered replacing those boards last spring. Alone. Linda had forgotten the stain color. Kevin hadn't noticed at all. I'm sure. I hung up. That night I packed a bag. Not everything. Just enough to get out clean. 2 suits, a week of clothes, my documents. I loaded it into the truck and parked 2 blocks away. Linda didn't notice. Or pretended not to. We had dinner. Leftovers. Kevin wasn't home. Linda asked about my day. I said, productive. She didn't ask what I meant. When she went upstairs to shower, I checked the documents one last time: marriage certificate, property title, accounts, cancellations. I laid them out on the desk in my home office. Each one a record of what I had built. Each one a receipt of what had been taken from me. At midnight, I left. No note. No final words. No dramatic exit. I walked out the door, stepped over the threshold, and closed it behind me with a softness that felt like mercy. I drove through the dark, past closed gas stations, past the cheap motels and silent houses of a city that had forgotten how to thank a man. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. 2 hours out of Columbus, I stopped at a rest area, stood under the fluorescent lights and sent one text. To Richard, Kevin's biological father. Message. Take it. It's a gift. I included the address. Nothing else. No explanation. No warning. He could have it, the house, the boy, the weight. Let him finally carry something. In the days that followed, I kept my phone on silent. Checked messages only at noon and midnight. Watched the panic bloom in reverse order. Linda first, then Kevin's fiancée, then her parents, then Linda again. Where are you? Did you cancel the venue? The university says the rent's unpaid. What's happening? Michael, please. Call me. Kevin's furious. Please don't do this. Is the house? Is it really listed? Michael, don't do this. We need to talk. You're overreacting. Come home. We can fix this. He didn't mean it. He's just a kid. I'm sorry, but I didn't answer, because something had settled in me. Not rage, not spite. Something colder. Not numb. Clear. I had done the math. I had counted the days, the dollars, the nights spent outside of rooms I paid for. And I had realized that love given without respect becomes servitude. They had made their declarations. Kevin had said his piece. Linda had smiled through it. Now I was saying mine, in silence, in absence, in dollars removed from accounts that once kept them whole. Let them learn what it costs to be cruel. The wedding planner called. I let it ring. The caterer emailed. I archived it. Kevin's fiancée messaged me on Instagram. A long paragraph about disappointment, about family, about how I'd ruined everything. I read it twice, not out of guilt, just to see the shape of her audacity. I wondered if she knew I had paid for the ring, bought with my credit card after Kevin's was declined. He promised to pay me back. He never did. In the motel, I laid the receipts out on the bed. One by one. Dry. Cold. Unsentimental. This wasn't revenge. It was accounting. The totals told the story. I had spent over $142,000 on Kevin's future in less than 5 years. Education, rent, food, transportation, a wedding I was never thanked for, a house saved from foreclosure, a life built from my exhaustion, and all of it had been repaid with mockery. You're nobody, so I became nobody, but with one difference. This nobody didn't pay anymore. Linda's final voicemail was soft, almost tearful. Michael, I'm scared. Please. If this is about Kevin, he's young. He didn't mean it. He's sorry. We're sorry. Just. Please don't sell the house. Please. But it was already done. The buyer had wired a deposit. The closing date was set. I would sign the final papers from another state. Kevin would come home from campus to a for sale sign he hadn't earned the right to protest. Linda would open the front door to an emptiness she helped create. And Richard, well, I imagine he read my message and laughed. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe he blocked me long ago. Maybe he'll show up one last time, try to play hero again, only to find there's nothing left to inherit. He won't take the house. Not really. But that wasn't the point. The point was I gave him the burden. Let him carry it. I spent the night in silence, lights off, curtains drawn, not sleeping, just existing, without obligation, without debt, without performance. For the first time in years, I didn't dream about being seen. I simply rested, and that was enough. The first thing they lost was the wedding. That was the spark. The planner called Linda 2 days after I disappeared. Linda hadn't checked her email. She was too busy dialing my number, pacing the front porch of a house she didn't own. So when she finally picked up and heard the words canceled, non-refundable, your husband withdrew, she must have felt the ground shift. Kevin called next. Angry, loud, demanding. Fix it. That's all he said in the voicemail he left me. His voice full of heat, thinly veiled panic. No apology, no regret. Just entitlement dressed up as urgency. I didn't answer. I never would again. By the end of that week, Linda had left 13 messages. Kevin left 4. Then the fiancé started texts, voicemails, even a chain of emails. One subject line simply read, WTF. I watched from a distance. Another city, another bed. My name still on the deed. My name still on the accounts, but the weight of those names was gone now. I'd shed them like a coat soaked through with years of silence. The calls started changing tone by day 5. Linda's messages lost their certainty. They started breaking apart. Michael, I don't understand. If this is about Kevin, I can talk to him. We can make this right. You've never done anything like this. This isn't you. Can we talk? Please? The voice that once told me to let it go now begged for answers. But I had none to give. Because I had given everything already. They just never noticed. The day the real fear set in, I felt it like a shift in the wind. Kevin left a voicemail, shorter this time. No bravado. No cursing. Did you cancel my tuition? No greeting. No preamble. Just that. Sharp. Bare. He must have tried logging into the student portal. Must have seen the warning flag. Payment past due. Or maybe it was the email from financial aid. Or the call from his landlord about the missing rent. The cracks were finally showing. The world was no longer shaped by my hands. And now that it wasn't, now that I had stepped back, everything was breaking. Linda's next message came just after. Michael, I just got off the phone with the bursar's office. They said you canceled the payments. That Kevin could lose his spot if the balance isn't paid by the 15th. I don't understand. Why would you do this? Why? It was always the wrong question. The right question would have been, why did you stay so long? They never asked that. Never wondered how I kept up the hours, the bills, the wait. Never questioned how the fridge was always full or why the heat stayed on even when the furnace groaned like it was dying. Never looked too closely at the bank statements or the tax forms. Never asked how many times I turned down new boots or a second helping at dinner because Kevin needed gas money. They didn't know because they didn't care. And now the silence was costing them. I imagined Kevin pacing his apartment, fingers in his hair, calling Linda every hour. I imagined the fiancé whispering behind closed doors about whether the wedding could still happen, whether my name had really been the only one holding it up. I imagined Linda sitting on the edge of our bed, my bed, staring at the space I'd left behind, the closet door ajar, the absence like a stain she couldn't scrub away. Let her sit with it. Let her hear the echo of her own silence. Because when Kevin had stood up at dinner and told me I was nobody, Linda had smiled. That moment, small, thoughtless, quick, had become the axis on which their entire future turned. The next time I answered a phone call, it wasn't Linda. It wasn't Kevin. It was the realtor. The buyer's ready to close early, she said. Wants to wire the balance within the week. Do it. You sure you don't want a grace period? I'm sure. I could picture the morning after. Linda coming downstairs in her robe, hair still damp, mug in hand, the doorbell ringing, an envelope, a signature required, a notice pinned to the wood, house sold, vacate by 30th, and Kevin coming home from campus to an empty room. No bed, no welcome, just a mother on the floor, hands in her hair, weeping over a home she had never truly owned. That would be the real wedding gift. I didn't want revenge. I wanted honesty, consequence. To see the truth walk into their lives the way I had walked out of it, quiet, cold, irreversible. On the 8th day, I drove past the house. Not close, not slow, just enough to see the yard. The windows. Kevin's car was gone. Linda's was in the driveway, crooked. The porch light was on in the middle of the afternoon. A sign of someone not thinking straight. I kept going. I booked a long-stay rental 2 states over. Changed my mailing address, froze the credit card Linda had used for groceries, shut down the auto debit for Kevin's car insurance, sent a final email to the wedding vendor with a scanned copy of my ID. Do not reinitiate any planning with this family. I am not financially responsible for their future. The planner replied with a single sentence. Understood. I'm sorry. It was the only apology I received. From a stranger. The next message I got from Linda was different. No pleading. No bargaining. Just 3 words. You win. Congratulations. I read it once. Deleted it. This wasn't about winning. It was about weight. About how long a man can carry a family that never reaches back. I remembered every night I came home late, boots heavy with drywall dust, spine aching. I remembered making Kevin's favorite spaghetti while he played video games upstairs, blasting some music that mocked me in its own way. I remembered Linda telling me, "You're being too sensitive," after Kevin rolled his eyes when I offered him a job referral, and now they wanted me to fix it. Again. The final voicemail came on a Thursday evening. Linda's voice was low. Hoarse. He's dropped out. Kevin. He said he couldn't keep up without the support. He's blaming me. Blaming everyone. He said he might go stay with his dad for a while. Michael. What do I tell him? The message ended there. Cut off. I didn't save it. Because it wasn't for me to answer anymore. Let her explain it to him. The boy she raised to believe that blood mattered more than effort, that names were stronger than actions, that money would always flow from invisible sources. Let her explain that love cannot be assumed, that every sacrifice demands its own quiet kind of respect. I hadn't left them. I had simply stopped holding them up. Now gravity was doing what I never had the heart to. It was making them fall. 2 hours after I crossed the state line, my phone rang. I was parked at a gas station just off the highway, the kind with flickering lights and a coffee machine that tasted like rust. I had already paid, already cleaned the windshield, already decided I wasn't going back. The phone vibrated once, then again. Linda. I watched it buzz itself quiet. I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel guilt. What I felt was distance. The kind that settles into your bones when you finally step far enough away from something heavy. I imagined her pacing the kitchen, barefoot, phone pressed to her ear. I imagined Kevin somewhere nearby, angry, loud, breaking things that weren't his. I let the call die. 5 minutes later, it rang again. Kevin this time. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. He'd gone through the list. Mother first, then me. Same order he'd always used when something needed paying for. I didn't answer. I drove on. By the time the sun started to drop, the calls had slowed. Not stopped, just softened. Desperation does that. It wears itself out. It starts with demands, then explanations, then bargaining, then silence. The final voicemail came just before dusk. Kevin's voice, stripped bare. Mike, I didn't mean it like that. Not, I'm sorry. Not yet. I was just joking. Everyone jokes like that. You didn't have to take it so seriously. There it was. Minimization. The last refuge of someone who finally understands they've gone too far. I listened to the whole thing. Every second. His voice cracking at the end, slipping into something almost childlike. You're really going to do this? Over one sentence? I deleted the message, because it hadn't been one sentence. It had been years. Years of being spoken over. Years of being reduced. Years of being tolerated only as long as I stayed useful. That dinner wasn't the wound, it was the diagnosis. I checked into a roadside motel just after dark. One bed. Thin walls. Clean enough. I lay down fully dressed and stared at the ceiling fan as it rattled itself through the night. I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls. 23 texts. For voicemails, I read none of them. Instead, I made one call of my own. To my bank. I separated every remaining account. Removed Linda's access. Closed the joint credit line. Transferred the final balance into an account she didn't know existed. Then I called my attorney. The same one who'd helped me clean up the foreclosure mess years earlier. I'm leaving, I said. Permanently. He didn't ask why. He asked where. That was the first kindness anyone had shown me in a long time. By noon, the house was no longer mine in anything but memory. By evening, the sale was locked. Linda would receive notice soon. Kevin would learn secondhand. Always secondhand. Always too late. That night, the phone rang one last time. Unknown number. I answered. Silence at first. Then breathing. Michael, Linda said. Her voice was small. Unfamiliar. I just found out. She whispered. The house. The wedding. Everything. Kevin's losing his mind. I said nothing. She kept talking. She always did when she was scared. He didn't understand. I didn't either. We thought you'd cool off. That you'd come home. Home. I looked around the motel room. The chipped desk. The humming air conditioner. The freedom. This was never a joke to me, I said finally. She started crying. I never asked to be worshipped, I continued. I asked not to be mocked. He's just a boy, she sobbed. He didn't know what he was saying. That's the problem, I said. He did. She tried to interrupt me. I didn't let her. You watched him do it. You smiled. You told him without words that it was acceptable. That I would take it. That I always would. Silence on the other end. I won't live like that anymore, I said. There was nothing left to add. I don't know how we're supposed to survive now, she whispered. I closed my eyes. You'll figure it out, I said. You always expected me to. And then I ended the call. I didn't block her number. I didn't need to. Some decisions don't require walls. Just distance. I drove west the next morning. No plan. No deadline. Just motion. For the first time in my life, I wasn't responsible for anyone else's future. That night, I sat alone in a diner and watched a father help his young son with a menu. The boy laughed. The man smiled. It was easy, natural, mutual. That had never been my role. I wasn't angry about it anymore. Some men are fathers. Some men are foundations. And some foundations eventually crack when the weight becomes too much. I had finally stepped out from underneath. So now I ask you, not them, not her, not the boy who learned too late, but you. Was I wrong to leave? Was I cruel to stop paying for a place where I was never welcome? Or is respect the one thing a man should never have to beg for? Tell me, would you have stayed?